On today's episode,
the man that the White House brought in to help better educate the veterans, Harsh Patel.
You have to get people to find what they're passionate about, what they see their purpose on this planet being. And the second half is help them execute on it.
The next Elon Musk is hiding somewhere in the ghetto. We have to somehow get in there and find these kids and wake them up.
If we can get people motivated or figure out what motivates them, then they're going to have grit.
it's time to go inside Quest with host Tom Bilyeu, president and co-founder of the second fastest growing private company in America. And now he's uncovering the universal principles of success.
I can tell you right now what principle number one is: follow your passion.
Inside Quest starts right now.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Inside Quest. We are the boot camp for the brain, and our goal is to bring on mental samurais who slash through the BS until there's nothing left standing but knowledge. And today's guest is a trailblazer in education reform. He is a former teacher for Teach for America, and he honed his chops on the mean streets of South Chicago and broke his mother's heart by abandoning a safe path into becoming a doctor in order to follow his passion. He's not a guy that backs down from a challenge, and he really believes that education is going to be the driving force for social reform and future-proofing yourself. Some say he's uncompromising, some may even call him brutal, but his mom just calls him harsh. Please help me in welcoming the man that the White House brought in to help better educate the veterans and the founder of the revolutionary tech boot camp Makersquare, Harsh Patel. Harsh,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Pleasure. What an
Absolute
intro.
pleasure. I do what I can, man. Looking through that stuff, though, that's really how it made me feel. Like, you've taken such a big, bold stance in terms of what education can do. And you speak in pretty bold language, which a lot of people do, and then don't back it up with action. And one of the things that really captured my imagination in what you said is I focus on outcomes. So if you're one of his stated goals, he wants to disrupt education, right? Now, a guy in the tech space, you use the word disrupt, it carries a lot of weight. But before we get to that, tell me how and why you broke your mother's heart and abandoned your career as a doctor.
Oh, man. So in undergrad, I studied biomedical engineering like a good Indian kid should. And I took the MCATs, applied to med school, got into med school. And it wasn't until I got accepted to med school where I was like, okay, now I can look around and see what else is out there. And I answered the request of one of the Teach for America recruiters on campus. And she convinced me that I should teach before I start my career in medicine instead of after. She convinced me that I should do 2 years of Teach for America. I was really good with kids, and just teaching was something that I think is inherent in me. And she told me I could do it for 2 years before I started my career, and I was like, I'm sold.
What did you think looking at Teach for America from the inside?
It was such a amazing experience for those kids, because I don't think that they otherwise would have had a teacher that was incredibly passionate about a particular career. A lot of them, like, once they saw my excitement about math and science, totally changed. You talk to their teachers like a year or two before my class, and they wouldn't believe how excited they are about math and science anymore. And so I had a fantastic experience myself. The kids had a fantastic experience. I grew myself a ton, and the kids did as well, which was like the best thing to see.
The way that I think of it is the next Elon Musk is hiding somewhere in the ghetto, right? So right now, somewhere undereducated is the next brilliant mind that's really going to reshape things. But because intelligence by itself is not a predictor of success and grit is, we have to somehow get in there and find these kids and wake them up. The thing that I read in an interview of yours, and this is a quote that I teased you with before we started rolling, I'm going to paraphrase, but it really, really captured my imagination and is where I hope we go pretty much for the rest of the show today. You said, if you were to take people and educate them in such a way that they were able to use rationality effectively, were able to tap into their passions and understand how to execute on their dreams, all of society's ills could be cured. And I thought, wow, that's such a bold statement. And I don't know if when you said it, you meant it that big, but even if it's just a hint in a direction of what can be done with education, like, that's one of the boldest mission statements I can think of, right? So here at Quest, we're all about dreaming big, thinking big. So when I heard that, so right now, obviously, Makersquare, you're killing it, but you're killing it in a niche space. But you've already got rhetoric out there about this is just the beginning, right? Like, we're going to move beyond that. What does that education paradigm look like? And what societal ills do you really believe we can impact?
Two big questions. I'll talk about the first one first. What does that look like? The educational paradigm that I think seems obvious to me, and the more I talk to people who have had problems with the system, recognize is, one, you have to get people to find what they're passionate about. That's half of it. The education system should help people figure out what they want to do, what gets them jazzed, what gets them excited, what they see their purpose on this planet being. That's half of it. And the second half the education system should do is help them execute on it. Like, figure out what you want to do and help execute on it.
Now, are you talking K through 12?
I'm talking across the board, just education in general.
Okay.
K through 12 can help you in the first half, more so.
Figuring out
what you want to do. Figuring out what gets you excited. Even undergrad can help you with figuring out what you want to do. That's where a lot of people
So I think because people agree with that on an intuitive level, no one stops to think about it, which is part of the reason why I think it's so inert. Why is finding out what you care about actually important?
Because that's what drives you to unleash the potential that's in you.
Have you read anything about grit or seen any of the studies?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Like, is that the tie? That's the thing that gives you perseverance?
Yes. Once you figure out what you're motivated with, or what gets you motivated, then you have unlimited amounts of grit, and that's going to carry you through whatever problem or mission you're trying to tackle. Because we both know grit's important, but you can't just expect someone to have grit. But what I've noticed over and over and over again is the people that are motivated about anything, maybe it's creating a tech company, solving some problem in the healthcare space, whatever it is, the most motivated people happen to have grit. And it's because their motivation sustains anything that comes their way, which is then grit. So I think if we can get people motivated or figure out what motivates them, then they're going to have grit because they want it so badly.
So Harsh, if you can just expand a little bit on people tap into their passion, they find what they're really interested in, but how is that actually going to help us down the road with the problems that we face as a society?
Let's see. In doing Teach for America, that's when I kind of solidified the belief that if you educate people properly, you solve every single societal problem that I could think of. Sounds absurd, but I don't just mean education in terms of like learning language, learning math, learning science, learning whatever. I'm talking about like education as a human being, like learning tolerance, learning grit, learning people having differences in opinion, learning all of those things that make a good human being that's good to be around. If those things can be part of the education system and all kids can grow up with that, then it solves like almost every problem that I can think of.
So could we call those adaptive skill sets, things like a growth mindset, grit, things that will apply to any avenue, no matter
any
what?
situation, any avenue, yeah.
Okay.
Like if kids are put into those situations where they learn those things at a younger age, then you don't have hate groups because people understand each other's differences and understand that people have different opinions. You don't have violence because people can communicate effectively with somebody else without resorting to violence as a means of communication. You don't have extreme poverty because people feel empowered to acquire skills to then put to work and generate income for themselves. You don't have terrorism because people, again, understand each other's differences and recognize that you can coexist while having a different set of beliefs.
All right, so how in the hell do you actually formalize in an educational environment the exploration of one's desires?
I don't know.
I was really hoping you had the answer.
So, but there's two parts here, right? I think I figured out the second part, or a little piece of the second part, which is help people execute to get to whatever they're motivated in. That's what we're doing as Makersquare right now. If they're already motivated, we give them a path to do it. So, but that's just one tiny little piece of the education puzzle. Right now, the only thing we're tackling is finding those motivated individuals and giving them a surefire path towards an outcome for achieving whatever it is that they're motivated in. I don't know how to tackle that first half, which is what motivates people, or how to get people to explore things that motivate them.
All right, I'm going to give Makersquare some mad props for a second, because then I'm going to drag your ass into deep waters where we're both going to be flailing around for a minute. So let's have a nice, beautiful view of this man for a second before we both crash and burn. So Makersquare, the thing that I think really makes them revolutionary, and the reason that so many of their graduates go on to get high-paying jobs after very short, intensive educational processes, what we talked about earlier, he focuses on outcome, right? So if you know what you're trying to do, if you're trying to get people high-paying jobs in technology that are sustainable, that they're going to be employed for long periods of time, it's very easy. You engage with the people that are going to hire them, and you figure out, hey, what do you need them to do? You constantly evolve the curriculum, which is one thing you guys have done an amazing job of. Staying ahead, staying outside of too much legislation, not falling prey to some of the things that more traditional schools do, so that you can be way more nimble than your competitors. Keep going, keep engaging, and then most importantly, they teach through doing. So you learn something and then you immediately do it. And there's something about that highly tactile nature. And for anybody that's paying attention, Ron Penna gave a shout out to a book called Anti-Fragile. If you're anything like me, the moment somebody throws out a good book recommendation, you're all over it. So I jumped on that book, read it, Nassim Taleb, amazing book. And he talks about literally this: the problem with education is that it's not about outcome. It's not about doing something. Book. He's a madman in the most brilliant way. Nassim Taleb, if by any chance you see this, got to get you on the show. He's literally phenomenal. The way that he thinks about the world is there's no bullshit in his universe. It is just cut and dry. And it comes down to what you're saying, which is if you're going to teach people how to execute, then teach them by executing. Like, don't get lost in the theory, right? Get your hands dirty, get in there. So anyway, what I think you guys are doing is amazing. I don't think anyone should be surprised by how rapidly you guys are growing. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I think that the paradigm is completely on point. Highly intensive, highly hands-on, get out in the workforce, constant communication with the workforce. However, you guys have a conceit, which is that you screen your applicants. Now, I have a conceit here at Quest. This is not a we take all comers. You have what, about a 20% acceptance rate?
Ish.
Yeah, so we're probably even worse than that.
Yeah.
And you said it really well. You want that number to be high because it means the right people are applying for the job. Don't fall for the status symbol of like, oh, so many people apply and nobody gets in. Like, that's not the point. The point is to speak well to the people that would do well at your program and then move forward. But in filtering those people out, you're obviously saying, this system can't help you. Mm-hmm. So I want to back up and just for a second, now is where we fall into deep waters with all the sharks, piranhas swirling around us. K through 12.
Yeah.
Kids in the inner cities, it's generationally undereducated. Generationally means your parents can't come to save you because they weren't educated either. And do you know Jeffrey Canada?
Yes.
Okay, the man, right?
Yeah.
And what did he say about adults?
I don't know.
I give up. I'm going after kids. I can't help the adults. It's too late for you. So he started working back all the way to when he finds out that a woman's pregnant, he tries to get her into a course to now start teaching her about how to speak to a child. Fascinating, fascinating man. If you have a chance, anybody listening, look up Jeffrey Canada. But he realized that the difference between people who go on to be successful and the people that don't, which is unfortunately oftentimes a socioeconomic divide, he said, is the number of positive words you hear by the time you're 5. That's nuts.
Wow.
That's the difference? The number of positive words you hear before the age of 5? It's crazy. It's just the language centers in the brain are developing right, and one of the easiest ways, the one thing we're all bamboozled by, is someone that can speak with eloquence, right? It doesn't mean they're saying anything of substance. You know, it's like, you really can get people to fall prey just to the patter, the way that somebody talks. And so those people go on to have an easier time getting through. So he wanted to literally just get people into systems where they're going to hear positive words from ideally their parents so that they're hearing, you know, the number of words that they need for the language centers to develop enough for them to go on and have success. And I think that's fascinating, and it hints at how early you have to start. But just like I think the answer that you seek for K through 12, that I seek, I mean, as an employer, right, I want this. As a human, I want this because I just want to see great things happen for people.
Yeah.
And as somebody who really wants other people going after stuff like Mars and electric cars and all the stuff that really inspires me, like, I want to do this. I want to crack this nut. But I'm going to guess that it's something equally surprising. So I'll give the first stab, and then hopefully you've got one that doesn't suck. My guess is it's all about interaction, right? It's about that hands-on experimentation. It's about getting kids in the reality of a field. So for instance, I hated math. I thought it was really stupid and a total waste of my time because I was never going to do math. And then I started a business and realized, oh God, there's so much math everywhere. Yep. And you wish that you'd gone back in time. But if I had had a real world encounter with math, it might have painted a very different picture. If I could have understood, abstract something like arbitrage, right? You're not going to give that to a kindergartner. Yeah. But when you can make those concepts concrete, tangible, touchable, then possibly it could turn into something. What do you think?
So you're saying the way to get people
to discover what they love.
To discover what they love is to give them practical
high touch.
High touch. Okay.
High touch.
I think it's get them in front of people that already know what they love and what they want, and get them in as many different types of people as possible at a young age. So
because you think they'll chase passion?
They'll see themselves in that person and think that they can do that if they want to. One of the most successful things that I did in my classroom, this was when I was a 5th grader, was bring in people for the students to talk to that were super passionate about what they do. And when you see kids in that moment where they see like, man, I could do that. I want to do what that person is doing. And I think I can actually get there at one point. Then they start to chase that. When you give kids a glimpse of what they could be doing or what the type of person they could be, then they have something to look at. They have something to strive towards. So that's my secret ingredient you were hoping for.
It's not bad, I'll be honest with you, and it's definitely regionalized, it's scalable, but now I'm going to give the producers of this show heart palpitations, and I'm going to turn to Yemeni Mesa. Yemeni, you have 2 daughters. They're incredibly different. Force this man to set your children free.
So I've got 2 daughters. One's already found her passion, the other one hasn't. For the one who's found her passion, it's music, and it's easy for her to practice. We don't actually have to get her to do it. We actually have to ask her to stop. However, she doesn't have the same passion for math. So how do we get her to have grit towards something that she has to do but doesn't like to do?
What a wonderfully dangerous question.
That is a dangerous question. First of all, I do not feel at all qualified to give parenting advice. Let's just make that clear. Yeah. Let's just make that clear. I think it's super important to encourage her to continue following that passion for music, because I think it'll develop her confidence. And maybe in 5-10 years, she'll be motivated about something else, but knowing that she can be confident that she can reach success will give her confidence later in reaching success with something else. Like, I'm sure she feels grit in music, right? She practices a ton. You said you can't pull her away from practicing. That's grit. It's not just limited to music. She could get passionate about something else later in life, but just recognize that in order to achieve success like she has in music, it's just going to take a lot of hard work and grit.
I'll give you a similar answer for a very different reason. I'm not a parent, and I feel completely justified in giving all the parenting advice in the world because I have 1,300 children. She's never going to find passion for anything else. Your daughter, truly, for the rest of her life, the #1 passion for her is going to be music. There's some people that get bit by that bug, especially when it's artistry like that, the desire to create. It's never going to go away. And if that isn't central in her life, I think she will always have a certain amount of frustration. However, knowledge really is power. And those words have lost meaning because they've been said so many times that they are trite. But put her in an industry, like let's take Jay-Z as an example for a second. The industry couldn't take advantage of him because he understood metrics, he understood numbers, he understood sales, he understood marketing. Right or wrong, he had been marketing to people who wished him harm. He had been in a business where people are actually trying to kill you. But in doing all of that, in fighting through that, and learning just profit, like how do you make this work, and understanding the value of controlling the supply, right? So he was one of the first people to go and own his masters, and he looked at other artists that had really succeeded financially and found the commonalities, and owning the masters was one of them, so he went after it, and he compiled his own masters. And from what I know, and I'm certainly not the foremost authority here, so I hope I'm not misstating the facts, but it's my understanding that part of his falling out with, I think it was Damon Dash, was over the fact that he wouldn't give him one of his masters. And to him, that was an act of war. Like, there was just no not giving him his master. So having a business mind, learning mathematics, understanding science, biology, right? She could find herself in the position I found myself in. I was eating less than I'd ever been eating in my life, and I was putting on more fat, and I didn't understand why, because I didn't understand macronutrients. I actually said to somebody, this licorice is fat-free. I should be able to eat as much of it as I want. And the person was like, you know, I think I heard that sugar can turn to fat. I was like, what? How on earth would sugar turn to fat? That's ridiculous. As I kept feeding my face with licorice. So ignorance is never going to serve you. So yes, it's an exercise of grit, but like Harsh is saying, she's already doing that enough with the things that motivate her. I don't know that she has to build that, but learning anything and everything that she can get her hands on, like the one thing that I wish I could give to people, another K through 12, I don't know how the hell you do this, but if you could just give somebody a curious mind, like if they just want to learn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'd never looked at Teach for America, wasn't on my radar. But man, in learning about you and learning about Makersquare, like I was interested. Now I have no desire to become a coder, but I was really interested, and I watched some of the presentations that your students did and was really drawn into the world and utterly fascinated by the way that you guys teach and all that, because I'm inquisitive, because I have a joy for knowledge, but I didn't always have it. So for me, it's like, how do you trace that back and figure out when did that snowball start rolling? Because now it's an obsession. But as a kid, I wouldn't even read.
So you haven't figured out what rewind in time, what that moment was when you became super curious?
To an extent. I'm going to give it to you really fast so that people don't like burn out and leave here. When I was 13, I swore to my dad I was never going to read again. My dad said, you're crazy. Read this one final book. If you don't like this book, I'll never ask you to read again. Out of spite, I decided to read that book. I still remember the opening line of that book to this day. The man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. It's the opening line to The Dark Tower by Stephen King. Thank you, Stephen King. One day I will repay that debt. After that, I realized it wasn't that I didn't like reading. I didn't like reading the things I'd been forced to read up to that point. So narrative was my first entree into ideas. And through narrative, I encountered ways of thinking that I had not yet encountered in my own life. And above my desk is something that says I equals I-O. It is the center of my life. Ideas in equal ideas out. If you don't encounter new ideas, if you aren't constantly, hey, I wonder why I have a show where I bring on people and get to know them. If you're not constantly encountering new ideas, ideas that challenge you, that make you rethink, that cause you to question everything. The book Anti-Fragile changed my vision of the universe. Like it is so far outside of how I thought of things before I read it, and now fundamentally I can never go back. It is, that kind of stuff to me is utterly fascinating. But it was a snowball that all started with a fiction book that drew me into reading, which caused me to encounter ideas that I loved. And I had the optionality, you were talking about that earlier, the optionality to choose. I got to choose now what books I wanted to read. And for years, I just read horror books, and that was it. But it opened a door.
It's kind of like with Elon Musk. After PayPal, he wanted to start SpaceX, so he picked up a book on rocketry and just read and learned. And he didn't have like years and years of training in it. He just knew that he could learn it whenever he wanted to or needed to, and he did it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the kind of stuff as we really grope with the notion of, okay, how do you actually empower people? I'm being sincere, and I don't know that if people understand how sincere I am, that one of the greatest goals for this company, one of the most important drivers behind doing this show is, honestly, I felt like I was awoken out of the matrix. That's how I think of it. I was trapped. I had a sense that I could do something more. And then as I got drawn more deeply into the world of business, I really felt like I'd been invited into a secret club. And I felt like at some point I'd crossed over. And the way I thought was, I'm now behind the curtain, right? The reference to the Wizard of Oz, ignore the man behind the curtain. And I felt like I'm now the guy behind the curtain. Like I actually understand how marketers manipulate you, how businesses want you to be ignorant to what they're doing. They want you to be ignorant to the manufacturing process, to the very nature of advertising. Like they need your ignorance. And I'm not saying that they're predatory. I'm just saying that's the give and take, is some people understand and so they can orchestrate, and others don't, and so they follow. And I thought, whoa, like now because I'm beginning to understand the way that this game works, I want more people on my side of the curtain, because on my side of the curtain, there's optionality. On my side of the curtain, you can choose, because you understand the way the game works. Like once you know the rules, you can play. But if you don't know the rules of the game, you can only watch, right? And that's where most people live, let's say baseball, soccer, whatever. Like they sit back and watch because they don't know the rules enough to get down and learn and get good at it. I really, really want to live in the world where people are playing. Like the more people that can play at a meaningful level, the world just gets more interesting. So the problem that you're trying to solve to me is like one of the fundamental problems to solve, and we're flirting with it. Inside Quest, we have what we call Quest University, and we've talked about what really is that, like what's the curriculum for Quest University. For me, the curriculum starts with the 25 bullet points on our Quest belief system. And the 25 bullet points are like me trying to invite people behind the curtain. Like if you can think like this, you will suddenly be on the other side of the curtain. Then the specificity of how you execute that is totally up to what drives you.
What are, out of curiosity, what are some of those on that 25 bullet point list?
You can do anything you set your mind to without limitation. That's a lie, but it's an empowering lie. We do and believe that which empowers us. Those are probably the two most important, is to understand the two competing ideas that you have to be able to hold in your head. Because the truth is you can't do anything you set your mind to. But there's so much that you can do that you might as well believe it, right? So don't waste your time focusing on the things that you can't do, because the difference between, Peter Diamandis sums it up even better, and he says, if you think it can't be done, you're right for you. So it's like, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And that was one of those lightning rod moments that changed my life. It was Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I will forever remember where I was when I finally realized that's what he was trying to convey in that book, and it was life-changing. And if people get nothing else out of the 25 bullets, that's really it.
It's like growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
That's exactly what it is. And going into the humanity of it, because inside your mind there's two voices. If you separate the corpus callosum so the left and right hemispheres can no longer communicate, people will actually begin to hear two separate voices in their mind that feel like two separate entities. It's pretty fascinating, to the point where one may believe in God and the other one doesn't. I mean, it's really like, if you want to go down a neurological rabbit hole, start researching that stuff. They're called split brain patients. And it's absolutely nuts how truly bifurcated the mind is. So you've got this voice that's like, yeah, you can do it. And then you've got the voice that's like, no, you're going to fuck it all up, right? So, and acknowledging that voice is always going to be there. And then it's really learning how to deal with that voice. That's another big section of the 25 bullet points, just to manage that and get over fear and stuff like that. Now, you've actually used the words fixed mindset and growth mindset before, but I don't think you've read Carol Dweck's book.
I haven't,
Where did you encounter that notion of?
Google.
Yeah, just...
I don't remember where, but I ran across it and I was like, holy shit, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Let's teach that.
Okay.
And I didn't run across, you said it's a book?
Yeah, Carol Dweck, she came on the show, amazing human being. I just want like plush dolls of Carol Dweck. She's like literally, she is a lovely human being. I'm not kidding, like the woman's just amazing. But it is what I consider, in all honesty, I don't say this to be hyperbolic, it is the most important book in the English language. It is so transformative for somebody that's, seriously, for somebody that's headed in the wrong, because I'm always asking the question before, so okay, if I've got a screening problem and I have to cut some people out, could I become the kind of person that could save that person and make them beneficial, right? So when we first started hiring in the inner cities, it was just person after person after person that I thought, they don't have basic skills to function as a human, so I can't let them on the line. But my belief system about people in general is that they could garner those skills if they were put in the right environment. So it really got me thinking about, what is that? Like, what's that thing that makes people bristle when you give them criticism, right? And the reason they bristle is because you've tapped into their insecurities. But then the question is, why are you being insecure about something that can make you more powerful?
Yeah.
Well, then it's because they don't see it as being more powerful. They don't think they can grow, right? And that was Carol's whole premise, is people split into two camps. People that think intelligence is fixed and there's nothing you can do about it, it's always going to be the same. So if somebody says you did that wrong, then you're just bad, you're dumb, you're not smart enough to do it. They don't think, oh, I could learn and whoa, now I'm more powerful. And then people that have a growth mindset that feel that way, right? That, oh my gosh, I can acquire that skill and now it's a new skill that I have and I can grow and get better. And that is the path choice, and that's why I think it's so important. The choice of path between one that can lead to success if you keep going, have grit, perseverance, and keep acquiring enough skills, and then one where it's literally stunted growth. You can't develop new skills because you don't believe it's possible.
I forgot who it was when I was explaining this fixed versus growth mindset to someone, and they said, well, what about the other side of the coin where there's so many successful business people that hired for people in different positions that they were not good at. And they recognized, hey, I'm not good at that, I'm not going to be good at it, so I'm going to go find someone that is good at it, versus having that growth mindset. What do you think about that? Doesn't that kind of go against the belief that both of us have? But then again, it also kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it does, and it actually plays into the way that you're building your school. So there's such thing as efficiency, right? So some skills I have enough passion and interest for that I'm going to go and do that. And like 3D design. Dude, I love 3D design. Like, I want to walk in a world where everything is just made in 3D. Like, that shit is so cool to me.
Yeah.
It's the most surreal thing I've ever seen in my life. It's called peak shift, right? It's more real than real. It looks so cool. So anyway, I'm a total freak for that. Sat down once to like learn how to do it, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. So it was like, I can hire people to do that. I'll focus over here. So it's not that I couldn't do it. It's that from
more efficient
time is limited, there's only certain things that I'm passionate about the execution of enough to be the one to garner those skills. Yeah. So like running the business, that's important to me. Understanding people, being able to read people, being able to thin slice, accurately assess. Like, I would love being one of the people that decides whether the people get into your school or not. Like, that's so fascinating to me. You just get this constant barrage of humans and you get a guess. Is this person good? Yes, no, whatever, and then test your guesses, which is how it starts, right? And then you develop a gut instinct and then you sort of fumble to put words to it. But at the end of the day, it's just you've filtered enough people and then watched how they do, that you've got a wide enough breadth that it looks like you've picked up on something, but it's really just volume.
Yeah, I've started hiring recently, like a lot, because of our growth. And I've found that the same traits we apply, like the fixed versus growth mindset in students that we're looking for, also applies to people that you're trying to hire for your company. And it was a fascinating exercise to just replicate that same thing and see it work. Like, when you test people for whether they have a fixed versus growth mindset, on whether they're in marketing or whether they're in, for us, teaching or operations or something else, and you watch them have a growth mindset, you're like, come on in.
And they're usually enthusiastic, right?
Yeah,
it's
they're
like
fun people to be around.
That. Yeah.
So they're so positive and it's infectious. Like, that growth mindset in people is infectious. No one wants to be around someone that says they can't do something.
Right. All right, where are we going beyond technology with your model?
I start sounding crazy when I get there because
my favorite.
Because 3 years ago, this industry didn't exist.
Right.
So if we were sitting here 3 years ago and I said, hey, we can make software engineers in 3 months, you'd even like, get the fuck out of here. Like, people go to 4 years computer science to do that, and then they do internships, all this shit. So anything I say right now is gonna sound really ridiculous.
Right.
But I think any skills-based occupation is a good candidate for this type of model. Being a surgeon is a skill. Doesn't it sound crazy that we could do this for surgeons? Like, we could do this type of training for the healthcare industry. Then that's just what I know, because that's what I went through. And I was like, oh, tons of efficiencies that we could have had.
You
could
need
do this.
to read Anti-Fragile. He talks specifically about that in the medical industry.
So many things are just skills in the workforce, and all of those can be retooled to be in this model that we're doing. So it sounds absurd, but
not even a little bit.
Okay.
It sounds, honestly, man, it sounds amazing. It makes me excited for people to know that, like, I'm gonna, right there, Carlitos. Carlitos' story is utterly fascinating. He's in the front row specifically because you're here. I told him he should absolutely quit working here and go take your course because it would be the best thing for him. It's a phenomenally interesting story. Carlitos grew up in the inner city, had a hard knock life. Can I be honest? His sister was shot to death in the heart with an AK-47 in his front yard. I mean, it's just, grew up hard, not like the like, oh, I couldn't get the banjo when I wanted it, like for real hard. And came to us with absolutely no experience in anything, put him on the line, minimum wage line worker, and just busted his ass and rose through the ranks till he was overseeing the line back when our line was made up of gang members, former drug dealers. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And this kid, and he was even younger then, managed to man up, and he ran the line, and it was impressive. And I said, look, my promise to every employee in this company is that I reward performance with opportunity. So now it's time for me to put my money where my mouth is. What do you want to do? And he said, I want to be in technology. And I was like, oh God, you sure?
No, but you probably already realized it, but you got to foster that.
For sure. And he's been in the tech team now for a year, right? Yeah, we moved him.
That's awesome. That's another thing I learned. Like, it goes against the grain of traditional recruiting because I don't see very many companies doing it. I guess you guys do the same thing now too, but it's that make it okay for people to be at your company for a year or 2 or 3 or any point in time until they stop being motivated at whatever they are doing in that position. You want to make it okay for them to feel comfortable telling their manager that, hey, I think it's time for me to roll.
Right.
And the manager being like, hell yeah. Like, so happy that you figured out the other thing. Sweet, now let's just close this up and I'll help you get to the next thing that you're trying to get to. And when you do that, you start attracting people on another level. Because that's kind of like how our society is right now with, let's call it millennials. People stay in a job for a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's not like the whole, you stay in one career for the rest of your life.
Right.
Everyone is like at the top of their game all the time because no one's there because they're being forced to be there to collect a paycheck. They're there because they're excited about it.
For sure. Harsh, man, I cannot thank you enough for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was incredible. Thank you for allowing me to explore in your world for a bit. It was utterly amazing.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. All right, everybody, this is a weekly show, so if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And you can also find us on InsideQuest.com. You can follow us at InsideQuest. And I'm also at Tom Bilyeu, last name B as in Bravo, I-L-Y-E-U. If only it were easier. But there it is. Thanks for joining us, guys. Until next time, be legendary. Take care.